Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I know you want to talk about the governor's latest political theater, but I've already put out a statement on that. And right now, we're going to talk about what we were scheduled to talk about today, a cold case from 1983. We owe that to the victims and their families. After I talk about that case, and after I take questions about that case, I'll briefly address the governor's presidential campaign. I'm joined today by Linda Sheffield. In 2018, my office created a conviction review unit to find and fix wrongful convictions. 2 years ago, that unit exonerated Robert Dubois. He'd spent 37 years in prison for a rape and murder that he did not commit. Our investigation found DNA evidence that established Robert did not murder Barbara Grams. However, that DNA evidence did provide new leads and launched a fresh investigation. I'm here today to announce the results of that investigation. We have identified the two men who actually murdered Barbara Grams 39 years ago. They are still alive, and they will finally face a reckoning for what they've done. And in another breakthrough for justice, we've determined that the two men who raped and murdered Barbara Grams raped and murdered another woman in Tampa in 1983, a crime that has gone unsolved for nearly 40 years. The victim in that second case is Linda Lanson. Additionally, these men are subjects in other cold case investigations from the same time period in the Tampa Bay area. Let me talk for a minute about our conviction review unit. When we created our CRU, as it's called, it was the first in Tampa Bay and one of the first in Florida. And the CRU reviews plausible claims of innocence. It's there to safeguard against wrongful convictions. In nearly every case, the CRU confirms that the system got it right and the right person is locked up. But as we see today, in the rare case where an innocent person is convicted, it means the actual criminal got away with the crime. But for these victims, that stops now. It's extremely rare for exonerations to be followed by the prosecution of the actual perpetrators. But earlier today, a Hillsborough County grand jury returned 2 indictments charging 2 men in the rape and murder of Barbara Grams and Linda Lanson. We can now prosecute these men, and we will. Now, law enforcement detectives have been critical in the 2-year effort to get us here today. These detectives carried these investigations forward from Tampa Police, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. And we shared one belief. This is why we put in all this work. This is why we're here today. To show Barbara and Linda are not forgotten. They deserve justice. Their family deserves justice, and our community deserves it. Let me explain how we got here. When we found and fixed the wrongful conviction, we didn't stop. We got to work. With our law enforcement partners working together, this is how we solved the cold cases. In short, the DNA sample in the Barbara Grams case did not contain any material from Robert Dubois, but it did include material from 2 other men. There's a national database containing DNA samples of certain convicted felons, and that database generated 2 leads. One on Amos Robinson, and the second on Abron Scott. Both these men, Amos Robinson and Abron Scott, are currently serving life sentences in Florida prison for a murder they committed in Pinellas County in October of 1983. FDLE and TPD detectives started putting in the hours. They gathered more evidence. They built a case that we could bring to court to prosecute for the murder of Barbara Grams. And our conviction review unit supervisor, Teresa Hall, ended up reaching out to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office to ask them to open a cold case investigation into Linda Lanson. With leads on Robinson and Scott, they were able to open that cold case, and as a result of those detectives' fantastic work, we can now finally deliver answers for Linda's family and peace for her soul. These 2 men, Amos Robinson and Abron Scott, murdered Linda Lanson. We now know that these 2 men carried out a sinister spree of rape and murder in Tampa Bay in the summer and fall of 1983. In July, Linda Lanson was found at the end of a Memorial Highway in Town and Country. She had been raped, shot in the head, and dumped in the bushes. In August, Barbara Grams was found behind a dental office in Tampa Heights. She had been beaten to death and raped. In September, Herminia Castro was found in a vacant lot in East Tampa. She had been shot and put in the trunk of a car, which was then set on fire. And in October of 1983, Carlos Orellana was found in the woods in Oldsmar. He'd been kidnapped, beaten, and run over with his own car. Now, Robinson and Scott were arrested and prosecuted for the murder of Orellana, and that's the crime for which they're serving a life sentence now. In 1991, 8 years after the offense, the state attorney's office charged Amos Robinson and another man in the murder of Herminia Castro, but that case never made it to trial because of lack of evidence. Since then, Robinson's actually killed 2 more people while he was in prison inmates. We've now connected Amos Robinson to 4 murders in a span of 103 days in Tampa in 1983, and Abraham Scott to 3 murders. These men are serial murderers and rapists, and although they're already serving a life sentence, their crimes against Barbara Grams and Linda Lanson cannot and will not go unpunished. These 2 victims were wonderful and kind women, and our community lost so much when they were taken from us. Linda Lanson was a freelance photographer. She was born in New York. She moved to Tampa as an adult. She left behind a 7-year-old daughter. Barbara Grams was a friendly, outgoing teenager who worked at the mall. 2 amazing spirits taken from us in a terrible way. It's hard to put into words how meaningful it was for me to be able to share with Barbara's brother and with Linda's niece and daughter that after decades of false closure, or no closure at all, they finally had the answers that they deserved. Barbara's brother has elected not to talk with the media. We ask that you respect his privacy. Linda Sheffield, here, is Linda Lanson's niece. They were close friends and roommates, and Linda has lived with the pain of loss and uncertainty for the past 39 years. We're honored to have her here. These investigations have taken more than 2 years. It's been a massive undertaking. And again, I want to thank the law enforcement detectives who assisted and carried these investigations forward. They lend a voice to victims who can't tell their own story, and we wouldn't be here today without their work. I also want to acknowledge a few members of the state attorney's office. Assistant State Attorney Teresa Hall began pulling at the threads of the Grams case more than 3 years ago, unraveling a wrongful conviction. She quarterbacked the cold case investigations with the law enforcement agencies. In addition, investigator Ray Estevez and legal assistant Candy Perry have been instrumental in the state attorney's office work. But above all, I want to thank the victims' families. For 37 years, the Grams family had false closure based on a false story. For 39 years, Linda Lance's family has had no answers at all. Carrying this unimaginable grief, they've been so patient and understanding as we work towards this day today. Before I finish, I want to make sure there's one thing everybody understands. The only person who benefits from a wrongful conviction is the actual criminal who got away with the crime. Let me be clear. Today's indictments would not have happened but for the work of our conviction review unit. A prosecutor's search for justice never ends. This painstaking work, our CRU retracing every step from a conviction 39 years ago, has not only freed an innocent man, but it's led to solving not 1, but 2 murders from 39 years ago. This shows the power of a conviction review unit to right wrongs, to uncover truths, and to deliver justice to victims and their families, even after 40 years. With that, I'd like to allow Linda to share some of her thoughts.
I am, excuse me. I'm Linda's namesake. She was my role model. She was a very strong, determined, warm, and wonderful woman that I personally depended on growing up. She taught me to count to 100. She taught me how to put on makeup. We go back. It was the beginning of my life. She was everything. These two men not only robbed me, but they robbed a 7-year-old little girl of her mother. I don't know if any of you have children, but she kept asking, is that my mother's car? Is that my mother's car? Where's my mom? Because she couldn't wrap her brain around what had actually happened. There are no words to describe what it is to go through 39 years of grief and not knowing what had happened. You know, I think at some point you stop and you forget about the criminals and you start to realize the void that's not there. You know, the void that is there for someone that helped you for so long. And today I still have pictures of her all over my house. I have her paintings. She was an excellent artist, as well as a photographer. I have those still hanging in my home because she'll never, ever truly be gone. What Andrew has done here is so needed, not only for myself, but there are so many families. This doesn't go away. When they're initially murdered, the shock is there. But 39 years later, the shock is no longer there. But the void stays, and the pain stays, and the crying stays. It doesn't go away. Our family is so grateful to Andrew, to Teresa Hall, who, with her dogged determination, not only went after these two men, but then went one step further to say, what else have they done? And that brought us answers that honestly we never thought we would get. We really never thought we would get. So we just grieved quietly. I hope, I don't know that I'll have closure because it's no longer about them. It's still about the loss, really. You know, I miss her very, very much every day. So, with people like Andrew here that are really there for the people, for people that need him to do what he did and did it so well, I keep saying thank you, and he keeps saying no, and I keep saying thank you, and he keeps saying no. But it's true. It's true. We need this, and we need it here, but we also need it all over the state. It's so important for him to spread the word and make it happen if he can. Can you do that?
Try.
Okay. So, my apologies for my tears. As I said, the pain, it never does. It never goes away. Never does. But hopefully we'll get some closure. Questions? I don't know where to go from here.
That's fine. So, Linda Lanson's daughter was not interested in speaking with the press, and I ask that you respect her privacy as well. She did prepare a statement that she asked me to read. I want to thank 3 people for their interest and their diligence in finding the murderers of my mother. First, attorney Teresa Hall, whose work for innocence and justice in these long-forgotten cold cases is inspiring. Second, State Attorney Andrew Warren, whose diligence and compassion have helped us through this horrendous experience. Third, Special Investigator Dan Bendig, whose tenacity and persistence will not be forgotten. For me, the loss of my beautiful mother will remain a walking nightmare. Excuse me. For me, the loss of my beautiful mother will remain a waking nightmare, but I thank them for at least bringing me some closure. Before we take questions, we had some information about the timeline and the defendants.
Can I go with you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got this slide that shows the two defendants, their criminal record.
No.
There's a picture of Linda and Barbara. I'll leave it up for just a few more seconds if you want to grab a shot of it. I can also put it up again later. And then Andrew mentioned the timeline of all these different killings, and we've got that laid out here that show July, August, September, October. Again, we'll leave it up for a few more seconds, let you get some images. I can put this back up at the end, but let's get another shot of it. I'll cycle back through this really quickly in case you need picture of Linda, Barbara, and then who took her away.
Happy to answer any questions about these cases.
Can you talk about the advancements in DNA and technology that made this possible? Because otherwise, an innocent person would still be in jail right now.
The work of the CRU is to dig, to figure out what happened in a case, and in those rare cases where we have a wrongful conviction, to fix it. In this case, because we were able to use DNA evidence that wasn't available in 1983 at the time, we were able to definitively determine that Robert Dubois was not the murderer in this case. And it led us to these two other people.
In terms of the sample that you're using to process the DNA, was that something that was collected in 1983 and never able to be processed on that level, or how did that work? Where did that come from?
The DNA sample in these cases came from rape kits that were collected and stored at the medical examiner's office. They had never been evaluated. Again, back in 1983, the technology really didn't exist. DNA evidence was at its infancy. But today, in 2020, and over the past couple of years, we've had the ability to take those samples, run them through national and state databases to get leads, and then build investigations from there.
So is it like they were collected at the time because the technology was emerging and so maybe they would be used in the future, or?
They were collected at the time because it was standard practice at the time to collect them. Why they sat unearthed for nearly 4 decades until my conviction review unit thought to actually look and do something about it is a question for the cosmos, I guess.
I know you said that, it doesn't get easier. People say time heals, but that's not the case with grief. Can you talk about what this day and moment means to you?
It's interesting. Your perspective changes on murder. But initially, like I said, when it happened, it was shock and disbelief, whereas now it's more retrospective, so it does change. This is a day that I never, ever thought would come. So to be able to have somebody accountable for what they did, not only to my aunt, but to everyone else and every other family that they touched, is beyond anything I would have expected. It means everything to me. And as the days go by, it means more and more. Maybe I'm slow on the uptake, but this has been incredible. And I know that Andrew will continue, I hope, to give this calm to other families because there are so many that need it. There's nothing worse than living with that for 40 years. It's incomprehensible. So this is a beginning to closure, which I still don't feel.
Linda, could you spell your last name for us?
Sure. Sheffield.
And how old are you?
I'm 67.
And you live here in Tampa? Or?
No, I don't live in Tampa. I live in Florida, but further south.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you say what city? Or what area, what county?
What county? Manatee.
Any other questions on the cold cases? Okay.
I do have a question
Yes.
for Linda, but it is gonna lead into what you were about to ask next. I just wanna know if, you have any thoughts on the governor's announcement impacting, this moment for you today?
I would have to say no comment.
Thank you.